The insistent chirping of his alarm clock dragged Ethan from his sleep. He groaned and fumbled for the snooze button. It was September 24th, 2024, a Tuesday, or was it? Ethan couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that he had lived this day before. The dream clung to him, a wisp of déjà vu. He shrugged it off. He had a busy day ahead. Ethan's morning routine was unremarkable. He showered, shaved, and dressed while listening to the news. The same news he felt he'd heard already. The headlines were a blur of political scandals and climate change warnings. He made himself a quick breakfast of toast and coffee, grabbed his briefcase and headed out the door. As Ethan drove to work, he noticed the same red car with a dented bumper in front of him. The same song played on the radio at the exact same moment. A shiver ran down his spine. These were just coincidences, right? He tried to dismiss the growing unease. He couldn't be living the same day over and over again. Could he? The workday was a monotonous slog. Ethan's job as a software developer required long hours in front of a computer screen. As he stared at the lines of code, his mind kept replaying the morning's events. The red car, the radio song, the feeling of familiarity with it all. He tried to focus on his work, but the nagging suspicion that something was wrong wouldn't leave him alone. The workday finally ended, and Ethan found himself driving home. His radio scanned through channels, landing on the same song from that morning. The same song, at the same time. This was no coincidence. Fear began to claw at the edges of his composure. He pulled into his driveway and sat in his car for a moment, heart pounding. He watched his neighbors going about their evening routines. Kids were playing in the street, couples walked hand in hand, and the aroma of barbecue filled the air. Everything seemed so normal, yet Ethan felt completely disconnected from it all. He went inside and tried to distract himself with a TV dinner and a mindless sitcom, but the feeling of unease persisted. He checked his phone for messages, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. He was certain he was living the same day repeatedly. That night, Ethan lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. He replayed the day's events in his mind, searching for any deviation from the previous day. There was none. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. He was trapped. The next morning, Ethan woke to the same chirping alarm, the same date on the calendar, September 24th, 2024. He felt a wave of despair wash over him. It was happening again. He was caught in a time loop, a prisoner of an endless September 24th. Days turned into weeks, each one identical to the last. The same red car, the same radio song, the same conversations, the same meals. At first, Ethan tried to break free. He deviated from his routine, performed random acts, even drove recklessly, hoping to disrupt the loop. His efforts were futile. The loop always reset. The endless repetition began to wear him down. His initial fear gave way to a soul-crushing monotony. He felt like a hamster on a wheel, running and running but going nowhere. Ethan's life had become a prison of his own making. He was a prisoner of time. His hope dwindled with each passing day. The world around him, once so familiar and comforting, now felt cold and alien. Ethan felt himself slipping into despair, the weight of his predicament threatening to crush him. He had to find a way out. He had to break free from this temporal prison. One Tuesday, or what felt like the 1000th Tuesday, Ethan decided to break his routine entirely. Instead of driving to work, he let his instincts take over. He wandered aimlessly, hoping to stumble upon something, anything, that could help him escape his predicament. He found himself in a part of the city he didn't recognize, a quaint little street lined with antique shops and bookstores. He stopped in front of a particularly inviting bookstore. Its window display featured a curious collection of old books on time travel, metaphysics, and the occult. A bell tinkled as he pushed open the door. The scent of old paper and leather filled the air. Behind a dusty counter sat an elderly man with a shock of white hair and piercing blue eyes. The man looked up from his book, his gaze intense and knowing. Ethan felt strangely drawn to him. The old man smiled, a knowing twinkle in his eye. "Looking for something specific, young man?" he asked, his voice raspy with age. Ethan hesitated, unsure how to explain his predicament. He settled on, "I'm feeling a bit lost." The old man listened intently as Ethan poured out his heart. He described the time loop, his failed attempts to escape, and the crushing despair that had enveloped him. When Ethan finished speaking, the old man remained silent for a moment, his fingers steepled thoughtfully under his chin. "Time," the old man finally said, his voice soft but steady, "is a fickle mistress. It can heal old wounds but also trap us in our past mistakes. He leaned forward, his eyes boring into Ethan's. Often the key to escaping a time loop lies not in changing the events themselves, but in understanding why you are forced to relive them. Ethan furrowed his brow. What do you mean? What past mistakes? The old man's words struck a chord deep within him, stirring a sense of unease. He couldn't recall any significant wrongdoings, any unresolved issues that could bind him to this endless cycle. Think carefully, young man, the old man urged, his voice taking on an almost hypnotic quality. Is there something you should have done differently? Someone you've wronged? Ethan closed his eyes, racking his brain for any such instance. Then it hit him. Alex. Alex was Ethan's best friend from college. They had been inseparable, sharing dreams, ambitions, and a passion for computer programming. After graduation, however, their paths diverged. Ethan landed a high-paying job at a prestigious tech firm, while Alex struggled to find his footing. Ethan had been so caught up in his own success that he had neglected his old friend. He had ignored Alex's calls, dismissed his problems, and eventually, their friendship faded away. The memory of their last conversation, filled with Alex's hurt and disappointment, flooded Ethan's mind. I need to find Alex, Ethan said, standing up abruptly, a newfound sense of purpose coursing through him. He realized that his imprisonment in this time loop was not a punishment but an opportunity, a chance to make amends for his past mistakes. Go then, the old man said, a knowing smile spreading across his face. Time waits for no one, but it also offers second chances to those who seek them. Ethan nodded his thanks and rushed out of the bookstore. He didn't look back, but he could have sworn he heard the old man's soft chuckle as the door closed behind him. Ethan spent the rest of that repeating day gathering information about Alex. He scoured social media, contacted old college friends, and even visited their old dorm building, desperately seeking any clue to Alex's whereabouts. It was a race against time, against the reset he knew was inevitable at the end of the day. He finally caught a break. A former classmate mentioned seeing Alex at a local coffee shop where aspiring entrepreneurs and freelancers gathered for networking. Ethan's heart leaped with a mix of hope and trepidation. He had a chance to set things right, to apologize for his neglect and hopefully rekindle their friendship. The coffee shop was bustling with activity when Ethan arrived. He spotted Alex sitting in a corner booth, deeply engrossed in his laptop. The years had changed him. Alex looked tired, his face etched with the lines of struggle and disappointment. But his eyes still held that familiar spark of intelligence and warmth. Ethan took a deep breath and approached Alex, his heart pounding in his chest. "Alex?" he asked tentatively. Alex looked up, his eyes widening in surprise. "Ethan, is that really you?" A wave of emotions washed over Alex's face, confusion, disbelief, and a flicker of the hurt he had carried for so long. "Alex, I know I haven't been there for you," Ethan began, his voice thick with emotion. "I let success go to my head, and I completely neglected our friendship. I'm so sorry, Alex." Alex remained silent, his expression unreadable. Ethan feared he had waited too long, that the damage he had inflicted was irreparable. Then slowly, a sad smile spread across Alex's face. "Ethan," he said, his voice tinged with resignation. "It's okay. I was hurt, yes, but I understand. People change, lives move on." "No, Alex, it's not okay," Ethan insisted, his voice filled with genuine remorse. "I was selfish and arrogant. I took our friendship for granted. I'm here now because I realize how much I miss you, how much I need you in my life." He reached out and placed his hand on Alex's arm, his touch tentative but sincere. "Please, Alex, give me a chance to make things right. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking for your forgiveness." Alex looked into Ethan's eyes, searching for any trace of insincerity. He saw only genuine remorse and a heartfelt plea for forgiveness. He sighed, the weight of the past lifting slightly from his shoulders. "Okay, Ethan," he said softly. "I forgive you." Relief washed over Ethan. He had been given a second chance, a chance to rebuild the friendship he had so carelessly tossed aside. They spent the rest of the day catching up, sharing stories, and reminiscing about old times. The years of hurt and resentment seemed to melt away as if they had never been. As the day drew to a close, Ethan felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced since his imprisonment in the time loop began. He had faced his past, acknowledged his mistakes, and sought redemption. He had learned a valuable lesson about the importance of friendship, humility, and the fleeting nature of time. Exhausted but content, Ethan returned home. As he lay in bed, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was different. He glanced at his alarm clock. It blinked back at him, displaying a date that sent a jolt of joy through his heart. September 25th, 2024. The loop was broken. Ethan had finally escaped the prison of September 24th. He climbed out of bed and walked to the window. The rising sun painted the sky in hues of pink and orange, a new dawn for a new day. He took a deep breath, savoring the freshness of the morning air. The world seemed different, sharper, more vibrant. Or perhaps it was Ethan who had changed. He was no longer the self-absorbed, ambitious young man who had taken his friends for granted. The time loop, for all its torment, had been a crucible, forging him into a better, more compassionate person. He had learned that success meant nothing without someone to share it with. That true happiness lay in cherishing the people who mattered most. Ethan picked up his phone and dialed Alex's number. He had a lot of making up to do, a lot of lost time to reclaim. He was ready to rebuild their friendship, to be there for Alex, to be the friend he should have been all along. Ethan's story is a powerful reminder that time is precious and should not be wasted. We often get so caught up in our own lives that we forget about the people who matter most. We take our relationships for granted, assuming they will always be there. But time has a way of slipping through our fingers, and relationships, like any living thing, need to be nurtured and cherished. Ethan's journey teaches us that it's never too late to make amends, to reach out to those we've hurt, and to rebuild broken bridges. As we navigate the complexities of life, let us remember the lessons Ethan learned. Value your friendships, be present in the lives of those you love, and never underestimate the power of forgiveness. For time, once lost, can never be regained.